Ringside with Emma Miskew and Ryan Steeves.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to Rinkside for episode 3. We're so glad you could join us, and as I understand it, there's now thousands and tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of listeners. So we're just exploding, Em, aren't we? So I thank everybody for tuning in for episode 3. We have a pretty riveting, I think really interesting, timely discussion here around tryouts. And spring season brings a lot of different tryouts to the fold. With it comes a lot of emotions and different feelings. And so Emma, can't wait to hear your perspectives, and we have a very special guest today to help us along.
Yeah, I'm really anxious to listen a little bit about this because I haven't experienced a lot of tryouts in my curling career. I did when I was younger in soccer, school sports, but I feel like the intensity that comes with tryouts and especially elite youth sports is probably very stressful. So I'm really curious on what your take is on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and before we get to that, I suppose, talking about elite and stressful, your stardom and your achievements have grown recently. A world championship. I know watching curling every night, every day is new to our household, but I can tell you, my little boys, my whole family, we were watching with admiration. Congratulations, Emma, just on a repeat championship. Yeah, we're just all so proud of you. I know all your listeners too and fans are just so proud of you.
Yeah, thank you. I feel like we went into the Worlds this year with a little bit more knowledge of what it would be like, but last year was in Canada and this one was in Korea, so it was a very different experience, but I'm really proud of my teammates and it was an amazing trip.
Yeah, well, you were fantastic again. The efficiency of your team, each of you, was incredible to watch, so yeah, congratulations.
Thank you. It was great.
Well, let's get this going. I know we're going to have a lot of interest in this, as I said off the top, because tryouts are ramping up. Baseball, soccer, hockey now, which is the real interesting one. And so I'd like to welcome our very special guest, Eric Macramella. Eric, welcome.
My man, I'm so happy to be on your show. This is episode number 3? It's very exciting. I just want to say that I recently went to Aruba, and so I've been back for about a month. And what's amazing is I think the sun there is different. I'm looking at myself now, and I'm thinking I'm still tan. Isn't this amazing? It's still. I think it's a different sun there. I was told by someone it's a different sun. So I'm really excited to be on your Smash Hit show, Ryan. You've been on my show 8 times. An 8-part series with you and Brendan Bell, who was on episode 1 of Ringside. Emma, you're famous, so this is great.
Yeah, and Eric, let me explain why you're here, as if people don't know.
Yes, please do, because I don't know why.
I'll explain to you why you're here and to all the listeners. Of course, Eric has the smash hit show, even though he's thrown that title around here, of Offside on TSN. It's available in podcast form, obviously. And, you write for Forbes, you're on the radio, you're on podcasts left and right, because you're a self-made expert. Beyond the beautiful Egyptian hair, you are an expert, and you dive into these things.
And the Aruba tan.
And the Aruba tan now. But one of the things that you've really done in recent years is immerse yourself in the youth sports in general. You're a wonderful coach, and you've got 2 young boys that are really athletes. But you've done what many parents don't do, is get involved. And so the reason I wanted you to be here today and talk about this, because you get involved at the convener level and you run tryouts, right? You're on the front lines, so to speak. Maybe you can tell us and just chat with us here about your perspectives, and we're going to sort of walk through the timeline of a tryout here and get to the very end. But you're really at the front end, organizing. So yeah, tell us what that experience is like, because it's not a very it's a thankless experience.
So on the hockey side, I'm a convener. I'm also the VP Ops. So I oversee the sort out process for all the levels. And then on the baseball side, I sort out kids and I have between the ages of 6 and 12. And really, I kind of stole a line from you. So this past weekend, we had baseball sort outs for minor, for 7 and 8 year olds effectively. And I assembled the kids at the center of the Sensplex in Canada, the turf in the front. And I let them know that these are not tryouts; they're sort outs. I'm going to try and find the best place for you to play, because you guys want to hit home runs, you want to have a lot of fun, you want to pitch, but that can only happen for you. You only have a really great time if you're at the right level. So these aren't tryouts. On the flip side, I've told parents in hockey and in baseball, you're sorting out the kids and you're cutting the parents. That's the issue, right? Which I've been attacked in parking lots many times.
Yeah.
So it's a kind of a delicate balance. What I've learned is the kids, particularly the younger kids, don't necessarily care at what level they're at when they score a goal. They just love scoring a goal, right? Or level at when they had a home run. But the parents seem to be in some instances, quite consumed with where the kid is at and where they're projected to go. So you'll often go to a rep game in hockey. For example, my son Daniel played on a rep team, who at the age of 10, he decided after 1 year he wasn't going back because he wasn't having fun. So he's smarter and more wise than all of us, right? So we're there and I'm in the crowd and it's kind of tense. And I'm having a great time. I've got a tan, I've got great hair, I'm having a really nice time, but it's tense. The next week I went to a tournament in Kingston and my son Nicky at the time was playing U9B, was asked to play on the C team at U11 because they were short. I said, sure, to go play. He had a phenomenal game. He had a great time. But what was so informative is the parents in the crowd. Anytime a kid came close to touching the puck and they had difficulty, skating, transportation was an issue. Okay. But anytime the kids came close to touching the puck, the parents went wild. Why? Because they weren't consumed about where their kid is at and where they're going. And that was a real lesson to me, that vis-a-vis the rep experience where there was this tension. And the kids feel it. The bottom line is, whatever the sport is, it's playing sports. It's just kids playing hockey. It's kids playing baseball. And to the parents listening, at U15, you will begin to wind down. Unless your son is Wyatt, Ryan, because he's going to the NHL. Okay? It's like a young Connor McDavid. He's so hyper-focused and doesn't like jokes. But at U15, you are winding down. So I know there's a lot there, but it's a complicated situation. But at the same time, I think if you approach it correctly, it's entirely clear and wonderfully simplistic.
Yeah. I always had a thought it's because in curling, the data that's brought in will go for a whole season. And then that can kind of lead you to get information and then make decisions on teammates and all that, even from like a young age. But in a specific tryouts, you're under pressure for just a certain length of time that will determine your entire season for the next year and who your teammates are, what positions, how much playing time you'll have. Do you see like a decline in play, or is for some, I'm sure it's different for different athletes, but I feel like the stress of that specific time in performing could lead to inferior play, maybe in some situations. Is that what you're seeing?
Emma, I think it's bang on. I think kids at every age are picking up on their parents' energy. I remember I was at a Sens game. It was with a buddy of mine. Actually, we're at the World Juniors. And I bumped into a dad and his son that were playing high-level hockey. But the kid was 11 years old. I never met the kid. I never met the dad. The guy I was with had literally a 2-minute conversation. I walked away. It was jarring. The kid was miserable. And I found out that the kid's been on sort of a steady decline. You know how the horses sort of change positions as you get older? It happens all the time, right? I mean, nothing really matters until puberty. At that point, the kid will make his or her own decisions. But the kids feel it. They feel it. And I think, as Ryan said on episode 1 on Offside, when we did youth sports and crazy parents, he said that when you get in the car after a game, what the kids want to see is they want to see a parent who loves them unconditionally and is there to support them. That's what they want. It's kids playing sports. And your kid will not perform if they're stressed. So remove your own personal expectations. I don't know about you guys, but what I have seen is there are some parents that define their value as a parent by virtue of their child's athletic accomplishments. So how is a kid who's 7 years old and 3/4, how is that child doing? They draw esteem from their kids' accomplishments. I think really, if you want to assess your value as a parent, it's not how well your child is performing, but how good a teammate they are. That's the most important thing, because in youth sports, you are raising adults. Critically important.
Well,
Sorry, I couldn't agree more with the being a good teammate part, because that was something that took me a long time to realize. And I don't know if it was like driven by my parents. Like my parents, I don't think it was my accomplishments. They wanted to, I think they just feel it so much. They want it so bad. They wanted it so bad for us from a young age. They felt, when we felt our losses, they felt our losses, and they feel our joys with us. But I do think that teammate perspective, that's something that isn't taught very well at a young age, like being a good teammate, bringing out the best in your teammates. As you see sometimes a lot of bickering between teammates, and it's like, you did that wrong, and pointing fingers, and that's just like the opposite of productivity out there. That's not going to make someone better.
Well, it actually gets worse, right? I mean, it gets worse because look at Ryan's level. He's AAA, right? So he's got these great players. Across the city, you have these players playing at the highest level. And what happens is they manifest a bit of the parents' attitude because the parents are concerned, particularly for the bubble kids or the kids who are not in the top 3 of that team. Will they be on that team next year, right? Because you want to make sure you still have that bag. You want to make sure you can tell other people, hey, my kid is playing at this level. So they manifest a bit of the parents. And what happens is they become competitive with their teammates. And the parents become competitive with each other. It's not an entirely healthy atmosphere because I'll tell you, these kids, if they're good and they hit puberty, they're going to be just fine, right? If they can become really good players, really good hockey players, baseball, or whatever it is, but you'll have a better sense of it once they're 12, 13, or 14. But I think at a young age, the absolute fundamental key is creating an environment for these kids that allows them to foster relationships and friendships long term. That's the test to me. It's not, they won't remember how many goals you score, remember how you made them feel. Sort of paraphrasing Maya Angelou, who was a good friend of mine, and that's not true.
So this is all, there's a lot to unpack there, Eric, in your comments. I think, one of the things we can't ignore here is there's many different emotions at tryouts. You're right. Some parents just want their kids to be on that top team so they don't have to swap out the hockey bag for a different logo next season. Some is that, they just want to continue playing with their best friends. And parents, as you said, Emma, will just be devastated if their child is then removed from the team with one of their best friends. Maybe there's carpooling issues. Maybe, who knows, right? There's lots of different emotions going on. No, but
that's the excuse that's always used is a carpool. I find that used across the board. Oh, he needs to play there because of carpool. Really? It's called a bus pass.
It's true. Yeah. Yeah. Right. But quoting you, Eric, quoting me, they're not tryouts. They're sort outs. And if you're doing it right, from U9 hockey, for instance, up to U15 when it really matters, you want to get the most out of the playing experience for kids. And being on the wrong team, just because you want to play on the highest team, will actually cause a stunted growth in your child. And so anyways, I think that's part of the emotion that we see in arenas, at ball diamonds, at soccer pitches right now for tryouts, is we want what's best for our children. Often that manifests in we just want them on the highest level team. Mm-hmm. And then I think where things go wrong is how tryouts are run, right? The moment a coach or an organization does something that's visibly wrong, you lose all credibility in that association. The coaches lose their credibility. And so I think it's maybe a good segue into, from the organizational standpoint, into how you run the tryout. And I'll give you an example, and I'd love your thoughts. I find the tryout process is entirely impersonal. You have this shield that's put up, and your parents are warned, don't ever go near the coach, don't look at the coach, don't park next to the coach, and talk about starting a process from a bad, tense place, right? So, something that I've tried to do, and I see other coaches doing it, but not enough of them, which is be in the children's face. Get in the locker room, fist pump every one of them, bring the temperature down. Because this isn't the case of a high school test where you can cram, right? You're not going to do anything in the week before tryouts that's going to really dramatically improve your child's ability to make a team. I think coaches have a really big role to play in bringing down the temperature, not standing up in the corner of a rink on a fake pedestal, having everyone watch you, but more being right on the ground, greeting parents, greeting kids, and being accessible. What do you think?
I love that. So I love it because I agree. If I didn't love it, or I didn't agree, I probably wouldn't love it. So right at the front end of the sort out this past weekend for baseball, when I assemble the kids, the first thing I tell the evaluators is, I don't know why sort outs are always so serious. I get that some people are a little bit concerned about parents attacking them in the parking lot. I get it. I understand that. But simply by virtue of being nice to kids doesn't preclude an objective empirical assessment of the kids. So I tell the kids, right when they sit down in front of me, that I am so happy that you are here. All the coaches are so happy you're here. Let's have a great time. Let's have fun. These sort outs are supposed to be fun. Baseball's fun. Hockey's fun. In hockey, I bring the kids to the bench right before they start the evaluation process. And I let them know that we are delighted that they are there. And we're going to find the best place for them to play so they have the best times of their lives. Mm-hmm. So I agree with you 100. I'm curious what Emma has to say about this, just because she curls at, like the highest level on the, but I feel as though the expectations of adults are so critically important because they inform the child of the experience they're about to have.
Yes. As a kid growing up, you feel your parents' energy. You don't want to disappoint your parents either. And not that I ever felt that disappointment, but you still are trying, you want to just win everything. You want to get in the car. You want to be on the best team. So I definitely there's no way that the parents, even every little reaction, you can feel that as the child. Every little body language, way things are worded. I'm sensitive myself to begin with. So anything was drastic. And even now, a lot of the work that we put in from a sports psych perspective is kind of relearning things that we had been taught as children in terms of winning and the demeanor on the ice. And it's all we have to do is just support each other out there. We're not going to be perfect all the time. It's we're not robots. We're going to make mistakes. It's just how do you learn from the mistake and try to make the best move on the next one. And I think that sometimes when you make a mistake, you start to hyper focus on it as opposed to being well, it's normal. I'm going to make a mistake because I'm not a robot. So I think that's really important. And honestly, every kid who's in sports, their parents should go through the training more than the kids should, because every action is so impactful, especially at that young age.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I'll be honest, I've tried out my whole life up until I was in my 20s and at the highest level. And I have PTSD when I see September roll around. Now it's springtime hockey tryouts, but September to me meant it was an anxious month. And that's a legitimate feeling that young kids now are feeling, and it's being projected onto them. I think we've all agreed here. And parents have a huge role in that. But, I think one of the critical pieces here is there is a sense that if you don't you can go down to the house league level in hockey, for instance. If you don't make the A team, or if you're not sorted out on the A team, then you're with perhaps a less qualified coach, which is a myth. If you don't make the AAA team, you're on the AA team, well, you're with a less capable coach. You're not on the highest team. So you've fallen off the tracks. And I think this is part of the reason why there's so much tension, is that the minute you fall down a level, you feel like your development path has been forever changed. And I think parents really need to understand, whether it's baseball, soccer, whichever sport, is that there's so much time. Everyone has their own timeline at the end of the world, right? Because when I got cut in Pee Wee hockey, which was, I suppose, U12, and it was devastating to my family, devastating to me. And, fast forward, I was at the NHL Combine, and a NHL rep asked me a question: who had the biggest impact on your hockey life? And, getting ready to write dad or mom on their sheets. And I said it was my U12 coach. Well, why is that? I said, well, he cut me, and I was one of the top players that year on the team. And it did not make sense. It did not make sense for the whole team. It did not make sense for parents, for me. And that resonated with me for the rest of my life because I was wronged. And I know many kids out there feel like they're wronged during tryouts. And some definitely are. I think everyone just needs to understand and reinforce this for their kids, that if you don't make this team, it's not the end of the world, right? You're going to learn something different. You're going to meet new friends. You'll learn on your own time. And, there isn't a track that you have to stay on. It's not a roller coaster to the top of this mountain. So I think that's a critical piece of why there's that energy in arenas and diamonds.
You say falling off the path or falling off the track. Really ask the parents, the path to what, right? My kids will both be greeters at Walmart. This is their destiny, okay? No matter how good a ball player, or ball players they are, this isn't going to go anywhere. I said, you wind down. U15, you begin to wind down. Speak to parents in U18, and they go, oops, my bad. So it's really critically important to try and have some level of perspective and ask yourself this. As a parent, how do I define success when it comes to my kids' involvement in youth sports? And some will say highest level, and that's all that matters. Fine. I respectfully disagree. For me, I define success as my kid is getting better at something, is drawing self-esteem from that something, is becoming a better person, is learning how to be a teammate, is learning how to lose, and also learning how to win. We don't talk about that enough. You got to learn how to win. All these qualities come together to create, I would hope, an adult who's not a jerk, right? That's kind of the goal. And so my definition of success, and this is how I coach baseball and hockey, is we're going to work hard. My mantra is work hard, have fun, be a good teammate. Right? You have to work hard. It doesn't mean there's no discipline. My practices and my games, Ryan, as you've seen, there's a lot of discipline. But the kids respond to it because they're having fun. And they know, even at an unconscious level, they're too young to be able to articulate it. They know that they're in a safe space where they're improving and they're having a lot of fun. And the parents see that too. So I've asked myself routinely and remind myself, Eric, don't forget how we define success in youth sports. Yeah. Really important.
Well, Eric, we were talking before we started today. You've got to talk about how you set the stage and set the tone for hockey sort-outs, because Eric, you convene. I don't know if you're back this year for more abuse, but you've convened at the minor hockey level. Tell us about this, because I think people need to follow your lead and lower the temperature, and you do that better than anybody.
Well, thanks, but I think humor is probably important. I mean, any way you can lower the temperature, I think is probably important. So as the VP Ops, I can email all the parents, which is an awfully dangerous thing.
Let you do that?
As the Law Society has reminded me repeatedly. But the members of the board kind of are fine with that approach, and then they kind of laugh. And actually, like, I sent out an email asking, I needed someone to step up as an equipment manager, which is a disgusting job. Now, who the hell wants to do that? But apparently the email was so funny that I had 2 people step up. So I'm like, hey, great, it works. But I send out, look, I find that particularly in hockey, less so in baseball, but in hockey, of course, that is all consuming, that it's far too serious from the age of like 4.5 all the way up to U18. And so you try and diffuse that a bit. And in these emails, I just let the parents, know that it's really important that if you want your kid to be successful, they have to go to the rink at 4 o'clock in the morning and work on their right outside edge while skating backwards and singing the anthem for 5 straight hours. And if they don't do that, then you are a bad parent. Stuff like that, right? It's continual. Yeah, and so the idea is to shine a light on that. And some parents see that as a bit of, they see that and they go, I feel there's some level of relief that they feel. Others, minority, it's always the case, don't necessarily like it, but it's kids playing hockey. There's no other way to say it. It's not adults using their kids to feel better about themselves. Yeah. It's not parents using kids to make sure that they look like good parents. Life isn't Facebook. It's not a curated version of your existence. You enroll your kid in sports, you position them for success, you put them in skating lessons. I've done that, of course, and I've got extra ice. I do all of that. But I guess the issue is, as you do those things, what's the attitude? What's the vibe? What's the energy that your kid is feeling from you, right? And in that 8-part series that we did together on the Smash Hit Show Offside with over 2 billion listeners, you were so great in communicating to the listeners that all the child wants from you is love and acceptance. And if you don't get that, then to be harsh but fair, you have failed as a parent.
Just in selecting players for the sort outs of the teams, how important is straight up skill versus the ones who are like really great teammates, bring everybody up, are really high support, and maybe a little less skilled? Like, is there a balance there, or is it straight skill? Because there's some really good players who are very hard to play with, but it's hard to ignore their skill level. So how do you pick in those situations?
Emma, isn't that like the $1 billion question?
It is. Can I Eric,
personally
let me tee you up, Eric. I know where you're going with this. And this is the first note I had for this show. I don't make notes for shows, but this was the first one I had and the only one, which was coaches don't always pick the best players, they pick the right ones. I think that was a Herb Brooksism, but isn't that the case?
I like that.
Right? Yeah, it's a really important one, and that's how the best teams are formed. Sometimes bigger problems come with the best players. Sometimes great benefits come with a perceived weaker player. And so anyways, sorry to interrupt you, Eric, but I think that's really what I wanted to hit with this show and impart some knowledge from you, Eric, and experience from us, hopefully, is how that team gets formed and what coaches should look for and how they look for it. Because that's the hardest piece. How do coaches, who are often just volunteers, maybe haven't even played a level above where they're coaching, how do you find that and recognize that?
She said Herb Brooks said that, so it turns out that wasn't a miracle on ice. That was foreseeable, right? I think, that is such a great philosophy. Emma, there have been times where there's a player who's ultra talented and just really good at that sport, and every inch of me wants to cut him or put him on a different team, a lower team, for example, or just another team, because you cannot, I'm sorry, it is nearly impossible to win anything of substance and to create a wonderful team environment if there is a player, just one player, who's incredibly disruptive, who is getting all the negative attention, all the energy. If you want to have a chance at meaningful success, sustained success, everybody has to be on board, and everybody has got to be a good teammate. And the outlier, I think, Emma, curious what you think, the outlier can ruin that experience. And I'd rather take the kid who's a great teammate, who has some athletic potential that we can develop, in favor of the kid who is clearly the best player on the team, but is going to hurt the team.
Yeah, I totally agree. And even this is often goes hand in hand to the very talented players who sometimes aren't a good teammate, also don't have a growth mindset and aren't receptive to feedback. And I find sometimes all that stuff kind of goes hand in hand. So they become uncoachable as well. And while they have natural talent, they're not in the NHL yet. They are still young, they're still growing, and having the mindset of being coachable and learning and trying to take in all that information is also a really important factor in who you bring on the team. And I mean, it's a very different situation, but we used to host a junior camp every year, and we would take in a whole bunch of kids and try to teach them different things that would make them better. And you know right away who the kids are who are going to take in everything that they can to learn from you and they're writing stuff down, versus the kids who are like, well, I've always done it this way and it's worked. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
If that's how you feel, then why did you come to the camp? But
Right.
It's one of those situations where, like, a lot of the time, the player who's maybe a little less skilled will end up being better in the long run because they come with characteristics that are going to make them better after a few years of training and learning and coaching and all of that.
Yeah, I loved what you said, Emma, growth mindset. That's Jason Boivin's. We had him on last week. His whole mantra, right? It's growth mindset. That's what you have to look for in kids, especially as you're picking these higher level teams, or any team, frankly. You know, the challenge here is, how do you do that, right? How do you do that in a baseball sortout, Eric, where the only baseball sortouts I've ever been to are assessing individual skills, 4 or 5 individual skills. I don't know how your elite organization runs them, Eric, but I've seen our organization, and it's tough to sort out baseball kids. Maybe tougher at the spring level.
Yeah, sort them out like in 45 minutes. You're right.
Well, it's often less. It's often run through 4 or 5 stations, give them a grade, and on you go. So there's no ability to assess any of these things we're talking about. In hockey, again, you know, you're probably guaranteed 3 hours of ice in a tryout. And so how do you do that? You know, how do you assess? Because, you know, on the top of my list typically is attitude, right? And how do you assess attitude? Well, you can't do it with a clipboard and a score of 1 to 5 from the stands. You've got to get down, you've got to hear them, you've got to be around them and try to assess that. And you can watch it how do they deal with failure on the ice during a tryout? Are they rushing to the front of the line any chance they get to bypass somebody because they just want to be seen more on the ice? How do they come to the rink? What's their attitude as they walk in? You know, are they early? Do they always forget their water bottle? You know, there's a lot of different ways coaches can really try to get at that element, and that has to be a big part of it, right? Their stride, their shot, their swing, how they catch, how they kick. All those things are very, they're also subjective, but they're a little more objective. So you've really got to spend the time as a coach, if that's the culture you want. If you want to ensure that you have the right mix, picking the right players, then you got to do a bit more work at tryouts. You can't, the clipboard in the stands doesn't cut it. So, you know, Eric, when you do your... Yeah,
coachability is critically important, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, coachability is critically important. I mean, it's difficult to assess in any sort out. You know, at the U9 level, they will begin to develop reputations as to what type of person they are and what type of player they are. And that's part of the data as you move forward at U11, U13, however you define those levels. I've always said, if you want to meet a kid, just meet his parents. That probably also helps in some circumstances as well. But I think you have to take the personality assessment seriously when you see them play for a year or two and they're going up to the next level. Mm-hmm. And that's all important. I agree with Emma that coachability is everything. You know, you're going to hit a certain age and you're no longer the best player on the ice. You might have peaked at U9 because you were bigger. We know people conflate size for athleticism, but don't get me started on that. So other kids catch up. The horses keep changing positions. And if you want to continue to improve and continue to get better, you have to listen to those who know what they're talking about. You have to be coachable. Mm-hmm. And if you're coachable, you will improve. If you're not coachable, you will not improve at the rate you should be improving. You will not be, as they say nowadays, you will not have a chance to be actualized. You're not going to have a chance to reach your potential. Nowadays in sports, it's kind of changed too, Ryan and Emma, right? It's not every player has a ceiling. Now it's identifying the ceiling and trying pushing it up, right? That's kind of, we'll put you in all these different things. Apart from the athletic potential, the personality potential is equally, if not more important.
Yeah.
Like, you know, when you do the NHL combine, the interview is a huge part of it, right?
Yeah.
You know, you interview these players because you want to determine, are they good people?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But that's hard. That's hard. And you know, Eric, in baseball, What advice can you give to parents? What can they take from how do I prepare for tryouts? First of all, physically, what can I do in the lead up to it? And then emotionally, how do we prep for the car ride? The 5 minutes you have with them, the 10 minutes when you drive to the diamond. So how can parents prep their kids physically and emotionally for that tryout? Maybe it's not just the sort out, which is a little less intense. That's really
From a physical standpoint, as you get old. Okay, so let's take the district level in baseball. Those are the all-star players.
Right.
So that sort out lasts 4 or 5 months. That's a long time. It goes winter ball, and then you whittle down the group until you get to May. But just that process, or just a general sort out as well, where you're just driving there, sorting out once and leaving, or sorting out a couple of times. From a baseball perspective, if this is something that you want to do and want to get good at, then you can hit the batting cage ahead of time. And you want, as extent as you can, toss with your kid. Let us play pitch and catch. Hit them balls, try and find an indoor program for them in winter. Because I will say this, we talk about it all the time. You have kids in winter ball, that's from January to the end of April. They are at a different level than the kids that show up in spring. Even though those kids are better athletes, it's night and day. It's not the same as hockey. Putting the kid in perfect skating or in skating lessons, the difference is not as noticeable from my perspective, having sorted out both sets of kids. The streams are quite different. You can get a significant advantage in baseball if you spend time with your kid and invest in your kid, have them go to BP, have them try and go to some winter ball program that's indoors. They will progress a lot quicker than they otherwise would. Insofar as the drive to the sort out, you let them know, again, it's not a tryout. They're going to find the best place for you to play. Your parents love you. We support you. Just go there, have a great time. Oh, and tomorrow we're going to the movies. That's going to be a ton of fun too. Or we're going to go to the Habs Sens game. That's going to be a ton of fun. It's not focusing so much on the moment where the kid feels the weight of expectation, be it his own or his parents' weight of expectations.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Great advice.
Hockey's changed too, Eric, as you know, with the appearance of spring tryouts. So now we're going from the end of a season in March or April to a tryout in April or May. And so there's not the same time to prepare for tryouts. This is one of the things that I really don't like about it as a parent and as a coach. Because there's less time to turn over the page, right? There's just that less, it's all condensed so much now for probably administrative reasons. The child doesn't have the time to turn the page or develop. Right? I remember one of my favorite parts of turning a season over was seeing a 5-month road ahead of me where I could really put in the work, because I was the kind of kid that really took that seriously as I got older, training, and I made huge gains between April and September for a tryout. And so, that changed in hockey, how they prepare for a tryout. You don't have the time to hit the BP, like you said, or throw with your child. And so I really think, my advice to parents and athletes or hockey players is, you're not going to have the same runway to improve and work on, skills X, Y, or Z. How do you show really well? Well, you show really well by narrowing down what you're trying to show. You can't be everybody. You can't be every type of player. You have to be you. You have to go out and do your job, your skills, and highlight those to the best of your ability. And I think sometimes that car ride for parents is rhyming off a list of all the things you have to hit. You have to be a good teammate. You have to pass well. When you get a chance to shoot hard. And you forecheck hard, make sure the coach sees that you can skate. And so there's this cram mentality now heading into a tryout where I think we just need to simplify the tasks, right? Go and do these 2 things really, really well today.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ryan, I agree with you. Be very specific, but don't provide a lot of advice. 1 or 2 things, that might be enough, Emma.
Yeah, and one thing I was curious about, because when I did tryouts for soccer, it was very long time ago. When the sorting is done, is there anything that's shared with the players for the reason for the sorting, or is it just here's your new coach, or you're on this team because of this, or what? Is there any reasoning? Because I feel like some kids or parents wouldn't be receptive to that anyway, and it could be an argument, but it could also help a lot of kids understand maybe why they were put in a certain position, like maybe coachability or...
I think Ryan... Yeah. Sorry. So I think Ryan and I are probably in the same...
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ryan.
No, you're right, Eric. We're of the same mindset for a lot of this.
Sorry, it's just a bit choppy, so...
Okay. There's a difficulty in that, like a practicality in that, Emma. In a perfect world, you would sit down every athlete and give them that 5-10 minute debrief and let them know why. Because a good coach could tell every player why they're being released or why they're being sorted out to a lower level. If you've really paid attention. I think it happens a little more the later you get into a tryout where the numbers are dropping and you have that, it's a little more practical to spend that time. But I can tell you in my experience, having had conversations with parents about their child, the parents who listen to you and respect your advice, who then go away and invest the time and energy into what you've told them, see the best results, right? But the parents who just disagree with it and aren't willing to accept the assessment because they believe it's for one reason or another, a political reason or a different reason, they're less willing to accept it. And so you try in good faith to say, here are the 2 or 3 reasons that not just me, but the 5 or 8 assessors saw. And if you can go down that one level and just focus on those things, or if you can spend your summer doing X and Y, it's going to see meaningful change. And, the one thing that I've seen with my younger son, and I've seen with other athletes of players who I've released, is where they go down to that lower level, they have a little bit more time and space. This is a soccer concept too, or a hockey concept. They have a little bit more time and space to operate. Their confidence, shockingly, starts to rise. They start to perform better. And so they are almost able to see more gains at the lower level than the bottom player at the higher level. And so this is, I know that's a difficult thing for parents to accept in the moment when their child's upset, but that really has to be the takeaway, I think.
Yeah, it's kind of that same feedback conversation that we've had in the past. Even the parents who can't accept the feedback, or the kids can't accept the feedback, it's the same thing. It's all just to make you better. And if you're going to take it in and learn from it, then you're going to be better. You're going to put the work in, you're going to understand. But if you put your back up to it and say you disagree or fight it or argue, that's never going to make you a better athlete or your kid a better athlete.
Yeah, and
going back to what you said, Emma, about the what do you share? I think everyone has a different philosophy that runs these. I think one way to go about it is full transparency. You have nothing to hide, because transparency, I think, breeds credibility, particularly in a situation in youth sports where a lot of us are coaching our kids. So as you mentioned in episode 1 with Brendan Bell, there was the issue of nepotism, right? Of favoritism. And because that's an inherent part of this process, or at least coaching your kid is, there has to be transparency. So for me personally, if the kids are trying out at a high level and they're bubble kids and don't make it, then I will talk to the kids and the parents face to face and go through everything and answer all their questions and leave it open to discussion. If you feel as though you have something to hide, that's how it's going to come across, and that just breeds suspicion and distrust. And the process should be predicated on transparency and credibility. And I think communication is a hallmark of any strong relationship, be it personal or professional. And if you have strong communication, that is going to make people feel more comfortable with the process.
I couldn't agree more, Eric. And, one of the things that's done, I don't know, probably 10 to 15% of the time in the hockey world is not the face-to-face release meetings, right, and explanations with coaches. And I can tell you, having gone through it at a young age, that the example I gave you in U12, when I was in U12 and I got released, it was a traumatic experience being in a room with people I didn't know, grown men, criticizing my game. I didn't hear very much. I heard that I saw that their body language was uncomfortable. I remember that. I saw that it was a really awkward situation. And then all I remember is that I had to leave a tunnel, walking past all of my tryout friends, having just been cut, them staring at you, crying, and walking into a lobby full of parents staring at you and exiting through a side door. It was a really tough environment. And so the balance here is finding the right time and the right way to communicate this with kids. I don't know at what age they start to be able to accept that feedback and hear it for anything other than you've just been cut. I think that's what most kids hear when you try to explain these things to them. And so I've utilized, phone calls after the fact with parents, but it's difficult. So I don't know, Eric, how is in your experience, have kids been receptive to that in a sort out environment or even a higher level tryout moment?
Well, I want to clarify. I'll talk to the parents, and then if they want to include the kid in the discussion, then I would change the tone, but I would include them. Yeah. Because we're not hiding anything, and I love all these kids. Like, coaching is the greatest thing in the world. It is so much fun to be with these kids. It's the greatest joy you will ever feel if it's something, if you like kids, at least. I found parents to be receptive. I have found some parents to be incredibly receptive in instances where they seem open to it. You provide a lot of detail as to what they need to work on and focus on the future rather than what happened. But as you know, Ryan and Emma, you know all too well, because you've been to the Olympics and stuff, that there are going to be some parents that are reflexively unwilling to accept anything that is remotely negative or detrimental or seen as critical of their kid. I think criticism is a good thing because you can grow from that. But kids need to be coachable, Emma, but I think parents need to be coachable too. Probably really important.
I think even more so, because the way that you talk to your child, even after like a tough try or a tough sort out or a tough game or anything, can directly impact how they perceive their own performance as being like the be all end all of everything. And it's not like that, because we're all like, especially as kids, like it's like one step at a time here. You're just trying to grow. You're just trying to learn. You're trying to see where you fit in the sporting world. And so like if parents go into these experiences with the mindset of like, you're going to make mistakes, it's okay. How can we learn from it? How can we grow? How can you be a better person out there, instead of being like, you need to make the team? Then a kid's going to go in with a more relaxed frame of mind anyways. And then the parents who argue and like are not really listening to feedback, I can't see that that's helpful for their child either, because no one's trying to give feedback for no reason. You're not going to make it up. You're not just like throwing out information that's not true. So I think that the parents, like getting your kids into sports, should look at all of these factors. And I think that sometimes the best parents and parent coaches are past athletes, because you understand what it was like to be in that situation. But parents who are playing on a more recreational level and were like pretty good at sports but never at that high level, sometimes they're just pushing it. They want their kid to have what they didn't, and sometimes that can be at a detriment to the kid.
Yeah.
It's funny I might say that. A dad once told me, hey, you coach the kids like you're okay if they get better than your son. I'm like, huh? I didn't understand it. I'm like, of course, obviously. But then the more I saw, the more I began to understand that. And I think part of gaining the acceptance of parents is they view you as someone who is impartial in the process and someone who is there to serve all the children rather than just one child, namely their own.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well said. Well, Eric, we've been going a while here. Can't thank you enough for your time and perspectives. Kudos to you for all the work you do in this difficult space. A tough time of year. I know baseball's ramping up, or if not, even already started. So thank you so much, Eric, for being here today on Ringside.
That was amazing. Ryan and Emma, I've never been on the air with an Olympian before, so cool. Pleasure. I wish you guys all the luck with this podcast. Ringside, it's going to be a smash hit show. I know it is, because you guys are tapping in to a fundamental need. And that is a discussion, frank discussions about youth sports, which are critically important and incredibly vital. So thanks for all that, guys.
Yeah. Thanks, Eric.
Thanks for being on.
Well, that was as always entertaining. Eric is a character, but the work that he does is really impressive. I think he certainly created a reputation for himself in this space, youth sports. I love his attitudes and his approach to all this, and I'm really happy we got him on and that people could hear from him.
Yeah, that was great. I think that whole mindset of like you're just being sorted onto a team, and it's going to be the team that's the best for you right now. It doesn't mean it's permanent. It doesn't mean it's forever. But this is where you're going to have the best time. Your skills are going to shine the most. And I think that's something that people don't think about ever. Like when I played soccer years ago, I wasn't on the highest team. I was on a competitive team, I think the second from the top in terms of the region. And I played up once and I didn't have any fun at all because I was the worst player out there. And I wanted to, when I was playing on my team, I had a great time. I was scoring goals. I was setting up plays. I was running up and down, stopping the other team. I loved it. And then I played up and was like, this wasn't very fun for me. So I think that taking that mindset of your child will be placed on a team that is best suited for them, and whatever they do on that team to grow or to learn or to become a better player is only going to help them in their future, regardless of the actual level that it's at, and stop seeing the division that kids are in as being the most important element and not their actual like well-being and growth and happiness.
Yeah. Yeah. I try to take a lot of what I learned being around NHL training camps. And, I never made the Avalanche. I was drafted by them, and I went to all the camps, and I played for their AHL team. But I took a lot from being at those training camps with some of the most world-class players like Joe Sakic at the time. And I've told a number of people this story where I showed up to my first Avs training camp, and walking towards me in their training facility was Joe Sakic, Hall of Famer, legend. And he walked up and said, "Hi, I'm Joe." No kidding. "I'm Ryan, and nice to meet you." We went our separate ways. The next morning, I was walking into the training facility, and he walked up to me and he's like, "Hey, Ryan." And I was floored. I was floored that he remembered, a low-level draft pick attending his first training camp. And the reason I say that is because I try to bring that into, why not bring that level of humanity, so to speak, into youth sports, right? Why can't everybody just be accepting with a rational mindset? And I know these are very different. Joe Sakic wasn't very threatened by me, and so it's easy for him to do that. But it's also very reminding for me is to approach these with a bit less of an intense environment, and just have everyone feel a little more comfortable. Because if everyone's a little more comfortable, even recognizing that they're very stressed out and anxious, maybe they'll perform a little better. And so I think this is a really important time of year for people, and hopefully they can pluck something out of this discussion we've had. And I appreciate your insights.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, and I think the next week's is an exciting one too. I think we're going to shift our focus to the high performance side, and this is where we're really going to lean on you as being the highest performer that I know, and particularly the season you've had and your team. Well, the last couple seasons, I forget how long you've just been dominating the scene, but wearing the maple leaf and sharing some of your knowledge about wearing the maple leaf and performing at that level and everything that brings with it.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about that a little bit because I've been lucky enough to wear the maple leaf a few times, and every experience has been different, both from like a results perspective and like mentally how it felt and the energy that was out there. So I'm interested to get your insight when I talk about some stuff, but I'm excited to talk about it a little bit and bring my experiences out.
Yeah, well, everyone will look forward to that, Emma.
Yeah.
So Thanks so much. Thanks for listening, everybody. That's episode 3, and we'll be back next week. Hope you tune in.